do you believe that good triumphed over evil, and that is what Christ represents. He represents the triumph of good over evil. What could be more important than that? And that's what I've learned over the past few years, is I've come to a deeper faith. I don't know how. I was talking to my cousin about this, and this is another thing that I think could be important to talk about. How did I come to my faith, and how did it happen? A few years ago, I was an atheist. Oh, not a few years, yeah, actually, a few years ago, maybe like 3-4 years ago. Completely denied that there could possibly be any God. You know, I had this, the classic atheist view of materialism. You know, a material God can't possibly exist. You know, there's no man in the sky. You know, we know the objective world and what it's made up of. The sun is a star. We orbit the sun. Moon orbits us. That's in a solar system. There's 9 planets in our solar system. There's a solar system for every star. There's so many stars in the Milky Way galaxy. There's a whole pile of galaxies. You know, we've measured the distance to many galaxies. We've measured this and that, and we know what's out there. And objectively, there's no man in the sky. And it doesn't make any sense for there to be a man in the sky from the objective point of view. And that was what I thought. I thought of things in terms of their objectivity. And so I was having this conversation with my cousin, and she asked me, where did your faith originate, and how did you come to this Christian faith that you have? And I think the first thing that I said was, it was a deeper understanding of the need for a morality. When I was younger, I just didn't understand it. I didn't even think about morality. I just didn't have any kind of a deeper, fundamental understanding of the fact that everything that we do is moral. Every act, every step you take is a decision to do one thing rather than an infinite number of other things. And it's a path that you choose through the darkness, through the chaos. You choose a specific path, and that path has to be based on what should you do. You have to prioritize the infinite number of paths which are laid out before you. And there's nothing else you can do. You have to prioritize them. You have to choose one, or else you can't act. You can't do anything. You can't live. Life is not possible without a prioritization of the possible pathways which lay themselves out before you. And now that I have an understanding of that, it's like, what exactly were you doing when you were younger? How did you not have any kind of an understanding of the fact of a morality? And it's hard to say. And the story of how I came to Christianity is a strange one. You know, when I was 14, 15, 16, about that age, the one thing that was on my mind was romantic relationships. All I wanted was a girlfriend. But when I was younger, I was also very prideful, and I would settle for nothing but the best, or what I thought was the best. So even though I truly desired nothing more than a romantic partner, there weren't very many romantic partners who would meet my standards. It was strange. It's hard to conceptualize who I was when I was young. But I suppose the important thing was that I was very much obsessed with getting a girlfriend. But another important thing is that it wasn't the pleasure associated with it that I was chasing. It wasn't the certainly wasn't anything virtuous that I was chasing after. What I was chasing after, what it was that I was valuing, was the opinions of others. I wanted to be seen by others as a womanizer. I wanted to be seen as this person who could get girls, you know. And I was talking to my cousin about this, and I was formulating what exactly it was that brought me to a Christian faith. And you might say, well, what's that got to do with it? Well, I never found someone who was willing to associate themselves romantically with me, who also at the same time met my standards. And so I got rejected a few times, and there was a few situations, very embarrassing situations, where I tried to act as if I didn't want this person, and my pride wouldn't let me tell the truth. The truth was that I wanted to go out with this person, but I wouldn't admit that, and it was a very weird situation, but it wasn't a good time in my life. I have notebooks of like a diary that I was writing at the time, and perhaps I'll do a video in the future on discussing that sort of thing and what I think you should do if you're having the same kind of thoughts that I was having. But I suppose the valuable thing for someone who is perhaps going through what I was going through then is to see what it is you're valuing highest, and to see that it is a moral world that we live in, and there's a subjective reality as well as an objective reality. Not only are we looking at objects when we see the world, we're looking at tools, we're looking at obstacles, we're looking at friends, and we're looking at foes. We're looking at things that can help us along our way to our goal, and we have to see what our goal is. We have to understand what it is that is driving us. I didn't have any understanding of that. I didn't realize that there was a subjective world out there. I just thought, well, there's an objective world, and I never found any interest in humanities when I was at school. It was always sciences and maths, and I never was exposed to. I did religious studies at GCSE, and there was talk of ethics and stuff. But when I was in those classes, it was how can I express this that others will be pleased? There was no understanding of that was what I was chasing after. There was no understanding of, oh, you're just trying to please others. What about what's actually good? What about what's actually true? There was no understanding of any of that sort of stuff. I just went with it, and there was no explicit understanding. Everything that I was doing was implicitly driven by something that I had no comprehension of what that was. So anyway, I was talking to my cousin about that, and I was trying to formulate the journey that I went on to get to where I am now. And in my head, that starts with the attitude towards romantic relationships that I had when I was about 15 or 16, and the rejections that I received. So I suppose I'll continue the story from there. So once I got rejected a few times, I was very down, very depressed. And like I said, I have diaries of the kind of things that were going through my mind, and they are not good. And I will discuss those in the future if I have the faith to talk about them. And by that I mean if I have enough faith in the fact that Christ died on the cross for us, if I have enough faith in that to see that what truly matters isn't what others think of me, it's what good could be done, what could others learn from learning about who I was in the past. If that makes any sense. I don't even know if that makes sense to me. It just means that there's two opposing reasons for why I should and shouldn't talk about the diary that I had in the past. So one would be, well, that's embarrassing and others don't need to know that, and you're exposing yourself to too much unnecessary ridicule, right? And then the other reason is, well, others could benefit from it, and it doesn't matter what these people that are ridiculing you say, because if you're going to ridicule someone for trying to do good, then you're simply being persecuted for the name of Christ. And Christ tells us, blessed are those who are persecuted for my name. That's what I mean. I mean that there's two opposing reasons. You know, there's a reason for why you shouldn't do it and a reason for why you should. And the reason for why you should is because Christ died on the cross. And that's a reason that are you going to have faith in that, or are you going to have faith in the idea that the opinions of men are more important? So I think that was a good point to make. Anyway, I will hopefully make a video in the future talking about my diaries, if I have enough faith. Anyway, so when I was down, it was for a long time, and then, you know, it really could have went the opposite direction. I was very resentful. I definitely wrote down in those books somewhere that I hated women, or something along those lines. It isn't. I definitely wrote down somewhere that it wasn't me. The fault didn't lie with me. Why do these women have to be so damn evil and picky, and the world is against me? You know, those sort of thoughts. Thoughts such as the ones that Cain had in the story of Cain and Abel. Resentful thoughts. And you know, we all know where Cain was led with the thoughts that he was having. It's cold. But I somehow escaped that pattern of thought. I escaped it. And this is where I always get stuck. You know, how did I escape it?